what?
What?
And it's at that time that she drops her hands down and clearly states,
I killed that little girl that night. Didn't anybody?
That moment, I'll never forget it. I've taken other confessions on very serious crimes, and usually the response is absolute elation. But I remember sitting across from her and looking at her and having the realization at that moment that I was looking into the eyes of the devil, except for he was in Nicole Frederick's body.
Lieutenant Loria obtained Nicole Frederick's confession after a 6-hour interrogation over 2 days. The taped confession was shown at her trial, along with evidence from the family home. Frederick was found guilty of the murder of her stepdaughter, Anne Marie Shawley, and sentenced to life imprisonment. Lieutenant Loria and Detective Woods achieved their results in the interrogation room without resorting to strongly coercive methods. But their approach is by no means universal. Highly coercive methods are applied to suspects in criminal interrogations. The danger of this is that it can lead to false confessions.
Most people like to think that there is no such thing as a false confession, that someone would never confess to the crime they didn't commit. They themselves believe that they never could be forced to confess to something they didn't really do. Yet evidence shows, under the right conditions, people will make false confessions.
In January 1988, a 12-year-old girl, Stephanie Crow, was killed in her own bedroom in the middle of the night. Her brother, Michael Crow, was interrogated by the police. They believed he had killed his sister.
Just start talking.
He was interrogated and eventually admitted to the crime.
It's like I have this overwhelming feeling that I killed her, but
Okay, let's
reason,
hear. Let me hear about. Let me
I
hear
don't
about.
know why I feel that way.
Let me hear about it.
All I know is for some reason I can tell I killed her.
He was charged with Stephanie Crow's murder. Problem was, the confession was false.
I don't know.
Dr. Richard Leo of the University of San Francisco has carried out extensive research into false confessions.
We have in the United States right now over 200 DNA exonerations. Exonerated indisputably by science. 15 to 20% of those DNA exonerations involve false confessions. We have several hundred other cases where we know the person falsely confessed.
You said the last time you saw John...
So why would someone risk ruining the rest of their life by confessing to a crime they didn't commit?
Most people have the perception that a police interrogation is a highly intense, very emotional, confrontational type of interview. But in fact, the more productive interview is not of that form. More often than not, an interrogator who's using the accusatory style has already developed a preconception before he comes into the interview room. And what he does is uses that narrow vision and begins to attack his subject.
There has to be an explanation.
I don't know.
The interrogation of Michael Crow was highly coercive and confrontational.
Just tell us what happened. You keep asking me questions I can't answer. What do you want me to do?
Michael Crow is 14 years old, and he's recently learned that his sister, who he loves dearly, is dead.
I haven't lied to you.
He's told them repeatedly he didn't do this. They keep accusing him. They've been in this room with him for many hours.
What I'd like for you to...
The detective tells Crow he has a choice of 2 paths. If he doesn't confess, he'll be punished in an adult prison. If he does confess, he will get help. This is a lie.
There's 2 paths to travel. There's the path of punishment, or there's the path that says, hey, I'm sorry for what I did.
There's the path toward rehabilitation. If he makes the confession they're looking for, that he killed his sister.
Because we need to go down a path where we're going to help you work this problem out.
And his repentance will mean that he's not criminally charged or punished. If he doesn't, then he will go to a hardcore juvenile prison.
Have you ever seen a prison yard? Have you heard of one?
No.
I've been there. Okay? You shower. You take a crap. You take a leak in the presence of hundreds of other people who you don't know from Adam. Okay? You do some things that Some of your most private and intimate things are going to be done in front of prison guards.
This two paths lie is an attempt to force Crow into confessing to the murder of his sister. Lies used in this highly coercive manner increase the risk of a suspect making a false confession. Another common tactic used in coercive interrogations is a sustained attack on a suspect's memory.
I don't remember what I did. I'm trying to tell you. You say I did it.
He's trying to tell them he has no memory, but they've beaten him down. He's crying. They're accusing him of selective memory.
If you selectively remember what you want the system to hear, the system isn't going to be that kind.
He's at a point of hopelessness,
I don't know.
and they're just coming back at him relentlessly.
I can't remember means I can't remember. I can't remember selectively is a little bit different.
And here they're trying to explain to him how he could have done this in the absence of having any memory, because he keeps saying, I didn't do it, I don't have any memory of this.
I just don't know.
And so they're coming up with this multiple personality theory.
I kind of think there's two parts to Michael.
There's a good Michael and there's a bad Michael. And the good Michael would never hurt or kill his sister. The bad Michael did it out of conscious awareness.
You're right, it's unconscious, but if I'm the good Michael right now, then the other is completely submerged. I can't remember.
What's really going on, though, here is that this is nothing short of child abuse. And he's having a breakdown. He's crying. He is psychologically tortured. This is a painful scene to watch. This is an egregious interrogation, absolutely awful interrogation.
The detective's highly coercive methods used during a 10-hour interrogation finally wear Crow down. He confesses to a crime he didn't commit.
Got a knife. Went to a room. Then I stabbed him.
These methods work on adults as well as children and lead to false confessions.
The confession is a piece of evidence that needs to be scrutinized as carefully as any other piece of evidence, and unless it can be verified and corroborated, it's not reliable. It shouldn't be considered reliable.
Fortunately for Michael Crow, evidence was found that exonerated him for the murder of his sister. Traces of her blood were found on the clothes of Richard Tewitt, a drifter who was spotted in the area the night of the murder. He was convicted of the murder of Stephanie Crow. Despite the best attempts of law enforcement, sometimes the guilty are not exposed in an interrogation, and sometimes the innocent are wrongly convicted. For this reason, there has always been the search for a foolproof method of detecting deception.
For many decades, man has been trying to find ways to employ technology as a tool to spot deception. This has been the holy grail of the science of interrogation.
The first lie detection technology to be invented was the polygraph in 1917. It measures changes in physiology which are caused by the stress of lying. The ability of the polygraph to detect deception has been extensively researched. Accuracy varies between 50 and 90%. For this reason, polygraph evidence is rarely accepted in a court of law. Recently, efforts to find a foolproof lie detection technology have gathered pace. Some of the most cutting-edge technologies are being developed and tested at the Defense Academy at Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Welcome to the Defense Academy for Credibility Assessment.
Researchers at the Academy have created a virtual interrogator, an avatar. It allows them to test the effects of changing the gender and look of the avatar in their lie detection experiments.
Good morning, Dr. Denver. Thank you for agreeing to talk with me today. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Please answer yes or no to each question. Let's begin.
In this test, a subject is asked a series of questions while an infrared camera records minute changes in temperature on their face.
Are you over the age of 17?
Yes. You're looking for temperature changes to questions of interest.
Are you now in South Carolina?
Yes. And temperatures increase a little bit when someone has gotten a little nervous about a question.
Do you sometimes drink water?
No.
Usually they're just very minute, tenth of a degree changes that occur for a few milliseconds. They rapidly come up, and then they rapidly go away back to a baseline.
Are you now on Fort Jackson?
No.
When Dr. Denver lied to this question, the computer correctly identified the deception by picking up the minute changes of temperature in his face, which are not visible to the naked eye.
If John Denver was answering that question to a border crossing guard, there could be a consequence to that. That might have meaningful information to that investigator, and they might say, John, we're going to take you over to this other room. I want to ask you a few more questions.
The interview is now over. Thank you for agreeing to talk with me today.
Not all the latest technologies rely on measuring a stress response to lying. This technology tracks the movement of the eyes when we look at human faces.
You look at pictures differently if they're familiar to you than if they're not familiar. If it's a familiar face, they will focus in on the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. And if they're not familiar, the gaze pattern diverges. The brain keeps saying, no, get me more information. Get me information around the hair, give me the ears, give me the chin, get me as much information as I can.
This technology could be used in missing persons cases. A suspect could be asked if they recognize someone. They might say that they don't, but their eye movements might betray that they do. None of these lie detection technologies are completely reliable. They all have their flaws. Those which rely on measuring stress responses might be fooled by the fact that people can experience stress even when they are telling the truth. Also, some people can lie without showing any stress. Even the eye tracking technology could be tricked by someone simply controlling their eye movements. But what if we were able to look even deeper into the human physiology, at the source of all truth and lies, the human brain? Researchers at Columbia University in New York have devised an experiment to see if the brain functions differently when we are lying. The magnetic resonance imaging machine measures increased areas of activity in different parts of the brain. In the experiment, a volunteer is placed in the MRI scanner.
So we're about to begin, Bobby. Are you set?
Yes, I'm ready.
He's then asked to tell a story in his head.
Begin the truthful story.
The first story is truthful.
Stop the story. Rest.
The second story is false.
Begin your deceptive story.
As the subject tells the story in their head, every part of their brain is scanned. The results are revealed later, once the images have been analyzed.
What we see in this map is that there are a number of colored areas. And these colored areas are areas where the computer has told us that there is a very, very elevated signal during the time that Bobby was telling a lie. This area in the center is the cingulate gyrus, known for its error correction functions.
This area of the brain may help the liar monitor what he is saying.
The middle frontal gyrus, an area for storytelling and language functions as well.
Fabricating a story may well put extra demands on this part of the brain.
So each of these areas are active when he was lying to us, and they are not active when he was telling the truth.
These new technologies are in the early stages of development. They've yet to be fully tested in real-life criminal interrogations. Will any of them ever be 100% accurate?
I'm skeptical. I think the MRI is based on a series of assumptions. I don't think it will do any better than the pseudoscientific technologies that have preceded it in ferreting out innocence from guilt, truth-telling from deception based on what's in one's mind, one's brain waves, one's body language. I think the whole endeavor is fraught with error, and we'll never in our lifetimes see the magic technology.
A technology which can detect deception 100% of the time, most believe will always elude us. In the absence of such a technology, we continue to depend on highly skilled interrogators who are dedicated